The first thing I remember is the sound, a sharp, splitting crack that echoed through the kitchen before I even felt the sting. My father's hand connected with my cheek so fast that my mind needed a full second to understand what had happened. Heat exploded across my face. My vision blurred. My knees trembled as if they might give out at any moment. I tasted blood at the corner of my mouth, metallic and bitter, mixing with the cold air that drifted in from the back door behind me. I heard Madison sobbing only after the ringing in my ears dimmed. She was curled against our mother, clutching her own cheek as if she had been the one struck. Her cries were breathless and theatrical, rising and falling in a rhythm she had perfected over the years. She looked like a wounded angel trembling exactly the way she knew would break our parents' hearts. Her voice cracked as she repeated the same accusation she had shouted 2 minutes earlier. "Emily hit me! I swear she hit me!" I could not believe what I was hearing. I had barely touched her. The truth was that she had rushed into my room screaming about the broken figurine in the living room. She blamed me instantly, and when I denied it, she shoved herself backward into the doorframe and scraped her own cheek with her fingernail. By the time she ran downstairs, dramatic tears already streaked her face. My mother pressed Madison's head against her chest and glared at me with a mix of disgust and heartbreak. She did not ask what happened. She did not ask if I was hurt. She did not ask how the fight even started. She only said something that made my stomach twist so violently I felt nauseous. "How could you do this to your sister?" I tried to speak. I truly did. I opened my mouth to explain, but the moment the first word left my lips, my father stepped forward and struck me so hard that my head snapped sideways. His voice was a deep growl, shaking with anger, that did not belong to this moment, but to 100 small disappointments that he had collected about me over the years. "Enough. You are done hurting this family." My heart pounded so fast I felt lightheaded. I reached for the counter to steady myself, but my father grabbed my arm and yanked it away. His fingers dug into my skin as he pulled me toward the back door. My mother followed closely, still holding Madison, who continued sobbing with such perfect timing that it sounded rehearsed. She kept her gaze fixed on me, wide-eyed, fearful, innocent, exactly the image she wanted them to see. My father shoved the door open, and a blast of freezing air slapped me in the face. The cold was so intense it felt like a physical force. The snow outside had already piled up against the steps, untouched and bright under the porch light. My breath turned to fog as soon as it left my lips. It was 10 degrees below zero. I had spent enough winters in Minnesota to know how dangerous that kind of cold could be. I instinctively stepped back from the doorway, but my father pushed me forward again. "Get out! Now!" His voice left no room for argument. I looked down and realized I was still barefoot. My socks had been left upstairs beside my bed. My shoes were by the front door, nowhere near me now. I tried again to speak. "Dad, please listen. I did not hit her. She is lying. I swear she is lying." He slammed his fist on the doorframe so hard that snow fell from the gutters above. "Stop lying! Madison would never lie about something like this." My mother nodded as if every word he said was sacred truth. Her grip tightened protectively around my sister, who peeked at me from the cocoon of my mother's arms with a look that sent a chill deeper than the winter air. It was the look of someone who had already won. My father shoved me once more, and this time I stumbled outside. My bare feet sank into the snow. The cold shot upward through my legs like needles. I gasped instinctively, curling my toes, but there was no warmth to be found anywhere. My entire body trembled as my father slammed the door shut. I heard the lock click into place. I stood frozen on the back porch wind, whipping my hair against my face, the night silent except for the sound of my own shaking breaths. That was the moment everything inside me cracked. My family just threw me away. I stared at the door, waiting for it to open again, waiting for someone to realize what they had done, but no movement came from inside. The house stayed dark and still. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the cold seep through my thin shirt like icy teeth. The world seemed to shrink until all that existed was the snow beneath my feet and the painful rhythm of my heartbeat. That night, barefoot in the 10 below zero snow, I realized they would rather believe her lies than my truth. I used to believe that turning 20 would magically free me from the heaviness I carried inside that house, as if adulthood alone could untangle the knots of my family's expectations. Instead, I found myself still living under the same roof, stuck between a future I could not afford and a past that refused to let me grow. People who grew up in warm, stable homes tended to assume that living with your parents at 20 was a sign of laziness or lack of ambition, but nothing about my situation felt easy or comfortable. I had planned to become a nurse. I had dreamed of moving into a small apartment near campus, decorating the walls with photos, learning how to cook something other than microwaved noodles, and maybe for the first time in my life, feeling like I belonged somewhere. I made it through my first semester of nursing school before everything fell apart. My grandmother suffered a stroke right before Christmas. She had raised my mother and half-raised me during my early years. Losing her strength and independence rattled our entire family, but it was my world that shifted the most violently. My mother insisted that someone needed to care for Grandma during recovery. Hospice care was too expensive, and my parents did not trust outside caregivers. My nursing classes, according to my mother, made me the most logical choice. She told me that family obligations came before personal dreams, and that helping Grandma was a privilege I should be grateful for. I withdrew from school with the intention of returning after one semester. I assumed they meant what they said and that after Grandma stabilized, I could go back. But the weeks turned into months. Grandma's condition required constant attention. When she began to show signs of cognitive decline, my mother relied on me even more. Whenever I tried to talk about returning to school, she would sigh dramatically and say she needed me at home. My father dismissed college as unnecessary debt. According to him, I should be focusing on finding a reliable job instead of chasing idealistic dreams. Without their financial support for tuition or housing, I became stuck. My father kept control of everything that mattered. My car was registered in his name. Without his permission and insurance coverage, I could not legally drive it. My phone plan was under his account. He regularly reminded me that he could shut it off if he felt disrespected. Even my bank account had started with him as the primary holder when I was a minor, and although I technically had my own card, he monitored every purchase. It created a kind of invisible cage not made of metal or locks, but expectations and obligations that squeezed tighter each year. I worked part-time at a small diner near the highway, earning just enough to pay for gas textbooks from my unfinished classes and the occasional treat if I collected enough tips. Some nights I would get home after midnight, only to be lectured for missing dinner with the family. Other nights I would come home early hoping to rest, only to be told that I needed to help Madison with homework, clean the kitchen, or watch Grandma for an hour, even though she often mistook me for someone else entirely. Madison, of course, lived a very different life. She did not have to work or pay bills. She did not have to take care of anyone. She went to school, went to cheer practice, posted pictures with her friends online, and floated through life as if she had been born on a cloud. Our parents adored her carefree charm and often used her as an example of what a daughter should be. I was the opposite. I showed stress, and stress was interpreted as defiance. I asked questions, and questions were seen as challenges. I tried to stand up for myself, and that became evidence of disrespect. I stayed in that house because I felt like I had no other choice. On the outside, I looked like a 20-year-old who had failed to launch. On the inside, I felt like a prisoner serving a sentence no one acknowledged. The truth was that independence was not a simple choice for me. It was an expensive luxury one I could not afford while trapped in a system designed to keep me dependent. I rehearsed leaving many times in my mind, imagining packing my bags quietly, driving away before dawn, and never looking back. But then I would remember that my father kept the car keys in his bedroom. I would remember that I had no savings large enough for rent. I would remember that my mother still needed help with Grandma's medications and that, without me, she might blame herself. Most of all, I would remember the fear of stepping into a world without any safety net. The fear of disappointing even the people who repeatedly disappointed me. So yes, I was 20 years old and still living at home, not because I lacked ambition or because I wanted an easy life, but because the alternative felt like walking blindly into darkness with no coat and no shoes. The irony was that on the night everything shattered, that was exactly what happened. I was pushed into the cold with nothing but the thin clothes I had been wearing barefoot on frozen ground that stole the warmth from my body with every step. And the painful truth settled in my mind as I stumbled away from the house. I had stayed because I thought leaving would destroy me. Instead, staying had almost done the same thing. Growing up in the Turner household meant learning very early that the world inside our walls did not operate on fairness, balance, or reason. It operated on a system that had been quietly constructed long before I understood what favoritism was. My parents never used the terms golden child or scapegoat, but the roles were carved into the foundation of our family dynamic long before I knew how to name them. Madison and I were only 2 years apart, yet we might as well have been raised in separate universes. She was the light, I was the shadow. She was the pride, I was the burden. She was the one everyone wanted to protect, while I was the one everyone needed to correct. If Madison giggled, my mother's face lit up like Christmas morning. If Madison pouted, my father rushed over to fix the problem. If she made a mistake, it became a family joke or a cute story they repeated at dinner. When she spilled juice on the carpet, Mom laughed and said accidents happen. When she stayed out past curfew, Dad said he trusted her judgment. When she forgot to turn in her homework, teachers shrugged it off because she was charming and polite and sparkling in the way popular girls seemed to naturally be. I, on the other hand, lived under a microscope. Every misstep was evidence. Every moment of tiredness, frustration, or sadness was interpreted as rebellion. If I sighed too loudly during chores, I was being ungrateful. If I came home late from work because a customer kept me, I was irresponsible. If I pushed back on anything they said, I was disrespectful. My father loved to say that I had a difficult personality. My mother preferred the term overly emotional spoken, with the kind of tone reserved for problem children. They never said these things to Madison. She was sweet, gentle, adorable. Those words were repeated like mantras. Sweet, gentle, adorable. I never understood how someone who could be so cruel to me could appear so angelic to everyone else, but Madison was gifted at managing her image. She always knew how to tilt her head just right, how to widen her eyes to seem vulnerable, how to soften her voice to seem pure. And she knew exactly when to weaponize it. At school, she floated down the hallways with a confidence that came from knowing you belonged. People waved at her, laughed with her, asked about her day. She posted group photos after football games, cheerleading videos, smiling selfies with captions about gratitude and blessings. Meanwhile, I learned how to shrink myself. I learned how to keep my voice down because anything I said could be twisted. I learned to anticipate my parents' moods so that I could prepare for their disappointment. I learned that if Madison and I had conflicting stories, hers would always be the one they believed. My mother used to tell people that Madison was the daughter she did not deserve, while I was the daughter she had to work twice as hard to understand. She said this with a light laugh as if it were a joke, but there was always a tightness in her voice that revealed something sharper and truer beneath. My father did not bother pretending. He encouraged comparisons openly. He said Madison had a natural grace that I lacked. He said she was polite while I was argumentative. He said she brought joy to the family while I brought stress. He said she would go far in life because she knew how to be likable, unlike me. By the time we reached our teenage years, the lines had been drawn so clearly that I stopped hoping they would ever blur. One winter, when I was 16 and Madison was 14, she accidentally crashed my father's truck into a mailbox while trying to move it a few feet out of the driveway. She had no license and no permission to drive it, but instead of punishing her, my father wrapped her in a hug and said he was just glad she was safe. He spent the next hour reassuring her that everyone made mistakes. A year later, when I dented the side panel of that same truck by misjudging the angle while backing out, my father shouted so loudly that neighbors turned their porch lights on. He took my keys away for a month. He said I had no respect for anything he worked for. He said I needed to grow up. He said I did it because I was jealous of Madison. That became the default explanation for everything. If I wanted quiet time, I was jealous. If I did not congratulate her loudly enough on some small achievement, I was jealous. If I ever disagreed with her version of events, I was jealous. Jealousy became the word they used as a shield, a way to defend her from accountability, a way to dismiss anything I said, a way to paint me as irrational. It was a trap, and they said it long before I had the maturity to understand why it worked so well. There were moments when I tried to confront the pattern, moments when I asked my mother why she always took Madison's side. She would look at me with a mix of irritation and pity and tell me I was imagining conflict where none existed. My father would accuse me of keeping score instead of appreciating family. They both insisted that they loved us equally, even as their actions contradicted every word. The most painful part was that Madison knew exactly how our parents operated, and she used it to her advantage. Whenever she wanted attention, she created small storms that always ended with her being comforted and me being blamed. If she needed help with something, she acted helpless so that I would be assigned the responsibility. If she wanted something, she pretended to be hurt or fragile until my parents bent over backward to give it to her. Over time, I became not just the scapegoat, but the emotional cushion of our home, absorbing the consequences of her behavior while she reaped the benefits. I learned to read her smirks the way other people learned to read books. I learned how her eyes narrowed slightly right before she lied. I learned the rhythm of her fake sobs, the ones that appeared whenever she needed to redirect blame. I knew Madison better than anyone because I was the one who paid for everything she did. All of that history continued to build like pressure inside a sealed container. Every slight, every accusation, every moment my parents ignored me or dismissed me added another layer to the tension. I never expected it to explode the way it did with one shattered figurine and one well-timed lie, but in hindsight, it makes perfect sense. The truth is that families do not break in one moment. They crack slowly in dozens of places until the final fracture makes it impossible to pretend the structure was ever stable. The night everything unraveled began as quietly as any other winter evening in our house, the kind where the cold settled against the windows, and the only sounds were the muffled hum of the heater and the occasional creak of old wood contracting in the cold. I had just finished a late shift at the diner and was heading upstairs exhausted and smelling faintly of coffee and fryer oil. My feet ached, my shoulders were tense, and all I wanted was a hot shower and an hour alone in my room before bed. Madison was already home, curled up on the couch earlier with her phone in hand, scarf still wrapped around her stylish coat as if she had just stepped off a holiday movie set. She barely acknowledged me when I walked through the door. I was used to it. Dad and Mom were in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner, and the leftover scent of slow-cooked roast still hung in the air. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard a soft crash from the hallway. It sounded like something ceramic hitting the floor, light enough to break but heavy enough to matter. I paused halfway through pulling my hair tie loose and listened. Another sound followed softer this time, like someone whispering a curse under their breath. I walked toward the noise and found Madison standing in front of the hallway table where my father kept his prized possession, a hand-painted porcelain figurine that had belonged to his father. It was shattered on the hardwood floor into at least 10 jagged pieces. Madison's face was frozen, not in shock but in calculation. Her eyes flicked from the broken shards to me, then back again as if she were scanning for the fastest route out of blame. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I knelt down automatically, instinctively, reaching to pick up a large fragment before she snapped, "Do not touch it." I stared up at her confused. Why not? She swallowed hard, her gaze darting toward the stairs, and I saw the moment her expression changed, like she had flipped a switch inside her mind. Her breathing quickened. She stepped back and pressed her hand to her cheek as if she were bracing for something. Then she dragged her fingernail across her skin fast and sharp, leaving a thin red mark. I blinked in disbelief, realizing too late what she was doing. "Madison, what are you doing?" Her eyes filled instantly with tears, not genuine ones, but the glossy, rapid kind that she could conjure at will. As she stepped away from the broken figurine, she intentionally kicked one of the shards closer to my foot. It scraped softly across the floor. She tilted her head just enough to create the look of fear she relied on whenever she needed a powerful scapegoat. "Emily, why did you do that?" Her voice trembled. I felt my stomach drop. "I did not touch you or that figurine. You broke it. I saw you." She shook her head and widened her eyes, the perfect picture of innocence wounded. "You pushed me." "You were angry about earlier." Angry about earlier. I had not even spoken to her all day. I barely had the energy to keep myself upright, yet she was already rewriting the story before my eyes. I stepped forward, trying to reach her before she could spin the lie any further, but she backed away like I was a threat. "Do not come near me!" Her voice cracked loud enough to carry downstairs. The panic in her tone was carefully measured, the kind that would trigger immediate parental intervention. I knew what was coming next, but there was no way to stop it. Madison took a deep breath, then let out a scream that echoed through the hallway with perfect dramatic timing. "Mom! Dad! Help!" Emily hit me. She pushed me into the table. "The figurine. It is broken." I instantly felt heat rise in my chest, not anger, but dread, heavy and suffocating. I heard chairs scrape against kitchen tiles below, footsteps pounding up the stairs, and my father's voice booming with alarm. "What happened? What did you do?" The way he asked the question already assumed guilt, already assigned blame. Madison collapsed onto the floor next to the broken figurine, shaking as if she were terrified. She hid her scratched cheek behind her hands as if she was afraid to show it. Mom reached her first, kneeling beside her like a desperate protector. "Baby, are you hurt? Let me see," Madison whispered through trembling lips. She pushed me because she was mad. I told her I was sorry about earlier, but she snapped. I had not snapped. I had not raised my voice. I had not touched her. But none of that mattered. My father stepped between us and pointed at the shattered pieces scattered in front of me. "What did you do?" His tone was final, as if the evidence he needed was right there at my feet. I tried to explain, tried to tell him Madison had been alone when it happened, that she had hurt herself to stage this entire scene, but he was already shaking with fury. He saw what he wanted to see. He heard what he wanted to hear. The truth no longer had a place in the conversation. To him, I was the problem. To her, I was the perfect villain. And to my mother, the only thing that mattered was protecting the daughter she had elevated to perfection. The moment Madison reached toward her and uttered the soft, pitiful words, she scared me. "Mom," the situation became irreversible. Looking into my father's eyes, I saw the decision form before he even opened his mouth. It was the kind of decision that changed everything. And I knew then that the night was only beginning. Madison's scream had barely faded when my parents reached the top of the stairs, but by the time they arrived, she was already deep into her performance. She curled herself against the wall beside the shattered figurine, her shoulders shaking with manufactured sobs, her hands trembling as she pressed them to her cheeks in a dramatic display of fear. The faint scratch she had given herself earlier was now the centerpiece of her story, a perfect visual cue that would guide their emotions exactly where she wanted them. Mom gasped the moment she saw it. "Oh, my goodness, sweetheart, what happened?" She dropped to her knees beside Madison, cupping her face with the same tenderness she never once directed at me. Madison flinched slightly, not from pain, but because she needed to sell the act. She whispered something intentionally too soft to be understood, letting Mom lean in closer, letting the tension build until she delivered the line she had practiced in her head. Emily pushed me, her voice cracked in just the right places. She pushed me and yelled at me, and then I fell into the table and everything broke. I stared at her in complete disbelief. Madison would have won an award if she had taken drama class. She looked up at Dad with watery eyes, her lip trembling as though she feared he might not believe her. But of course he did. He always did. Dad's face reddened instantly. He turned toward me with the kind of fury that made the air around him feel dangerous. "Why would you do that to your sister?" His voice thundered down the hallway. I opened my mouth to explain, but the moment I inhaled to speak, he snapped at me again. "Do not even start. I know that look. You only make that face when you are lying." And that was all it took. Madison let out another shaky sob, burying her face against Mom as if the mere sound of my voice frightened her. Mom stroked her hair and whispered soothing words, completely ignoring the truth standing right in front of them. "How many times do we have to deal with this?" my mother muttered sharply. "You always twist things and make everything difficult." My pulse pounded so hard I thought I might be sick. I pointed at the shards on the floor, trying desperately to hold on to logic. I did not break that. She was alone when I came upstairs. She panicked and made up a story. That is not what happened. Madison cried quickly, cutting me off. You started yelling at me because you were angry about earlier. You shoved me, Emily. You shoved me. The speed and confidence of her lie stunned me. She built her narrative with such precision that even I almost believed she had rehearsed it. My father crouched beside the broken porcelain, picking up a fragment carefully as if it was a piece of something holy. This belonged to your grandfather. He looked up at me with icy disappointment. You just could not control yourself. You never can. My entire body felt like it was vibrating. I tried again, fighting through the panic tight in my throat. Dad, please, listen, I never touched her. She hurt herself. She wanted to make it look like I did this. She is lying. Madison let out a sharp gasp and recoiled dramatically. Stop! Please, stop! She cried. You are scaring me again. Mom immediately wrapped her arms around her. See? Look at her. She is terrified of you. Terrified. I am your daughter too, I said, my voice cracking. But the moment the words left my mouth, I realized how fragile they sounded. The truth never mattered here. Not mine. Not ever. Dad stood suddenly towering over me, his jaw clenched, his breath heavy with anger. You have crossed every line tonight. You put your hands on your sister. You broke something priceless, and now you are lying to our faces instead of taking responsibility. I backed away instinctively, my heart hammering in my chest. I did not touch her. You have to believe me. He stepped forward, ignoring every word. No more excuses. No more attitude. No more disrespect. Your sister has done nothing to deserve this. She has always tried. She has always been kind. My ears rang at those words because they felt like the sharpest betrayal yet. Madison kind. Madison innocent. Madison wronged, all because she said so. Madison sniffled and hid her face again, letting my parents fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. She had them wrapped so tightly around her finger that she barely needed to speak anymore. Dad pointed at my room. That is it. I have had enough. Pack a few things. We are done dealing with this behavior. The words hit me with the weight of a physical blow. What are you talking about? He leaned in so close I could feel his breath against my skin. You are leaving this house tonight. Before I could react, before I could even process the threat, Madison whimpered softly behind him. Please, do not make her stay, she whispered. I do not feel safe. That sentence sealed everything. The trap had been set with perfect precision, and I had walked into it without a chance to defend myself. My father's hand wrapped around my arm as he dragged me toward my room. Stop lying. Stop arguing. Stop causing problems. He did not listen to a single word I said. He never intended to. And as he pulled me away, Madison wiped her face quickly, the tears vanishing long enough for a tiny, victorious smirk to slip through. It was only visible for a second, but that second told the whole truth. The hallway felt smaller with every step my father forced me to take, as if the walls were closing in around us, squeezing out any possibility of reasoning or escape. His grip on my arm tightened until it burned, and even though I twisted to loosen it, he only squeezed harder, pulling me down the hall like I was something dangerous rather than his daughter. The floor creaked beneath our feet, the sound distorted by the pounding of my heart. Behind us, Madison whimpered softly, milking the moment for everything it was worth. Mom hovered beside her, murmuring soothing reassurances that made the entire situation feel surreal, as if I were watching someone else's nightmare instead of living my own. Dad yanked my bedroom door open so violently that it smacked the wall and bounced back slightly. "Grab your things," he ordered. I stared at him frozen because the words made no sense. My things? For what? "You are leaving this house tonight," he said again, louder this time, as if volume alone could turn his madness into truth. "You do not get to stay here after attacking your sister." I stood still, unable to move my body, trembling with disbelief. I did not attack her. I did not attack anyone. You know I did not. I had hoped that saying the words out loud might bring back the father who used to carry me on his shoulders when I was small, but the man in front of me was unreachable. He stepped forward and shoved me back with both hands, sending me stumbling into the side of my dresser. Pain shot through my lower back from the impact. "Do not lie to me in my own house," he shouted, his face inches from mine. "But I am not lying." I wanted to scream, but the words died in my throat, smothered by fear and the crushing weight of helplessness. My father opened my dresser drawers and began pulling clothes out at random, tossing them onto the bed in a messy, chaotic pile. Socks, shirts, jeans, sweaters, everything landed in a heap as if nothing I owned deserved even the slightest care. Mom appeared in the doorway holding a plastic grocery bag, the kind you get at the store when you forget your reusable ones. She shoved it towards me and said, "Fill this. You are not staying here tonight." She did not meet my eyes. She did not care if I had a plan, a place to go, or any protection against the weather outside. She only cared that Madison looked distressed. When I did not immediately reach for the bag, Dad stepped toward me again. "Move." His voice was low and lethal. I flinched and grabbed the bag, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely keep the plastic from crinkling loudly. My room blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Refused to let either of them see me break. I shoved a handful of clothes into the bag, not caring what they were, just grabbing fabric until the bag was full. The clothes were wrinkled and mismatched pieces of my life thrown together in panic. Dad grabbed my jacket from the closet, but tossed it aside when he noticed my shoes were missing. "Where are they?" I swallowed hard. "By the front door." I had taken them off when I got home from work, still wearing my diner flats. Dad's jaw tightened as if my answer was a personal offense. "Go get them," he said, pulling me by the arm again. I barely had time to grab my jacket before he dragged me downstairs. Madison was already waiting at the bottom, clutching Mom's arm and wiping at her eyes as if she had just survived some catastrophe. When she looked at me, her expression flickered for a moment, pride slipping through her carefully crafted fear. She whispered something to Mom that I could not hear, but Mom's grip around her tightened. Dad shoved me toward the door. "Put your shoes on and get out." I bent down to reach for them, but Madison suddenly let out a small cry. "Do not let her near me, please." Theatrical terror poured off her in waves. Mom gasped as if Madison were facing a wild animal. "Richard, no, do not let her go near Madison's shoes. Make her go out the back." The words felt like a punch to my chest. Out the back. Out into the snow. My father nodded, not even glancing at the front door again. He steered me toward the kitchen, his footsteps heavy with certainty. The kitchen light flickered slightly, illuminating the cold tile floor. My breath caught in my throat as he pushed me toward the back door, the one that led straight to the snow-covered patio. "Dad, please," I begged, finally breaking. "I do not have shoes. I do not have anything. It is freezing outside." He did not slow down. "You should have thought of that before you laid your hands on your sister." "I did not." I whispered the words, barely holding together. He opened the back door, the icy wind rushing in like an unwelcome ghost. The temperature hit me instantly, biting through my jacket, stabbing at my legs, making every inch of exposed skin burn. My father's face was unreadable as he stepped aside. "Out. Now." Mom appeared again behind him, still holding Madison, who kept her gaze fixed on the floor as though the sight of me might contaminate her. I took a single step backward, shaking my head. "You cannot do this to me. Not like this." Dad raised his hand as if ready to strike again. I instinctively flinched, and that was enough for him. He shoved me hard, and I stumbled out onto the snow. The cold pierced through my feet, sharp and unforgiving. My toes curled painfully as I gasped. The wind slammed the door the moment he pushed it shut. The lock clicked into place. I pounded my fists against the wood, screaming for them to open the door, begging them to listen, but the house stayed silent. I slid down onto the icy steps, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Snowflakes landed on my skin, melting into freezing droplets. The darkness around me was quiet and endless. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered into the night, "They do not want me. They really do not want me." The moment the back door slammed shut behind me, leaving me stranded in the brutal cold, I felt every ounce of warmth rip away from my body. The snow beneath my bare feet burned so intensely that it almost felt like standing on fire, except the pain came with a numbness that crept upward far too quickly. I pressed my hand to the door one last time, hoping irrationally that it might open again, that someone inside would grow a conscience, but the lock remained firm, indifferent. The porch light cast a harsh glow across the yard, turning the falling snow into a curtain of white needles. My breath rose in trembling clouds. My fingers stiffened around the thin plastic bag holding my clothes. My mind raced through every possibility, but none of them led me back inside that house. I had nowhere to go but forward. I forced myself down the steps, each movement sending shockwaves through my frozen feet. The snow clung to my skin, melting enough to soak through, then refreezing into a biting layer that made walking agonizing. The street was eerily quiet, blanketed in white, the kind of winter stillness that usually felt peaceful but now felt like a threat. Streetlights flickered in the distance. No cars passed. No windows glowed with friendly warmth. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself, pulling my jacket closer, even though it did little to stop the icy wind slicing across my skin. The first place that came to mind was Kayla's house. She lived only 10 minutes away if the sidewalk was clear, but tonight the snow was at least 6 inches deep, and every step felt like trudging through cement mixed with shards of ice. Kayla had been my closest friend since freshman year. She was the one person who knew how strained things were at home, though even she did not know the full extent of it. I had always been too embarrassed to admit how bad things really were. But now, with no shoes, no phone battery, and the temperature dropping even lower, I had no choice but to get to her house before my body gave out. I kept my eyes on the street ahead, focusing on the vague outline of familiar houses. The world blurred at the edges as the cold clawed deeper. My feet felt heavier with every step, turning from burning pain to tingling numbness that terrified me even more. I stumbled several times, nearly dropping the plastic bag, catching myself only because I refused to collapse in the snow. I told myself it was just 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. My body screamed that it was much longer. By the time Kayla's house came into view, my vision had begun to pulse in and out like a flickering light bulb. Her driveway was covered in snow, her father's pickup parked at an angle like he had come home in a hurry. I forced myself forward and climbed the few steps to the porch, gripping the railing tightly. My fingers felt stiff and wooden, barely able to curl. I knocked on the door, the sound weak at first, so I used all my strength to pound harder. Please, please be awake. The porch light flickered on. A moment later, the door swung open and Kayla appeared, her face going from tired confusion to sheer horror in the span of 3 seconds. Emily. Oh my God! She grabbed my arm and pulled me inside before I could even speak. The warmth hit me in a rush, painful and overwhelming. My skin stung as the blood struggled to return. Kayla pushed the door shut and turned to look at me wide-eyed. What happened to you? Why are you barefoot? Her voice shook. I opened my mouth, but what came out sounded slurred. They kicked me out. I could barely form words. Kayla gasped and guided me toward the couch, helping me sit as gently as she could. Hold on. Just stay here. Do not move. She hurried toward the hallway and returned with a stack of towels and an old blanket. She wrapped the blanket around my shoulders and began gently drying my feet, wincing at how red and swollen they were. Kayla's dad appeared a moment later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. His expression shifted quickly from annoyance to concern when he saw me curled on the couch. What on earth is going on? Kayla looked up at him, her voice trembling with anger. Her parents kicked her out in the snow. Dad, she walked here barefoot. He blinked, stunned into silence for a moment. Then he sighed, running a hand down his face. Jesus. He looked at me for a long second, and I knew what he was thinking. He knew my family. He had seen enough glimpses of our dynamics to suspect something was wrong, but he had never wanted to get involved. Most adults did not. After a moment of hesitation, he said quietly, "She can stay tonight, but only tonight." His voice was firm, stressed, not cruel, but clearly overwhelmed by the idea of getting tangled in someone else's family issues. Kayla's shoulders tensed, but she did not argue. She knew pushing him would only make things worse. "Okay, Dad. Thank you." She stayed by my side while he returned to his room. Her hand squeezed mine. "Emily, what happened?" I stared at the carpet, feeling the tears break free now that I was somewhere safe enough for them to fall. Madison lied again. This time, she made it look like I hit her, and they believed her. They always do. Kayla's jaw clenched, her eyes darkening. She whispered something under her breath that sounded like a curse. Then she tucked the blanket tighter around me. "You are safe here. You can stay until you figure something out." But her father's voice from down the hall cut through the moment and reminded both of us of the truth. He said only for tonight. I knew he was not a bad man. He was just scared of conflict, scared of dealing with the messy consequences of broken families. Most people were, and as much as it hurt, I could not blame him. People like Madison and my parents made sure their lies were neat and believable. People like me were too messy, too complicated, too easy to push aside. I leaned back into the couch, exhausted, numb, and overwhelmed. The warmth of the house seeped slowly into my bones, fighting the cold that had settled deep inside me. For the first time since being pushed into the snow, I felt the tiniest bit of relief, but it was laced with dread. Because I could already sense the truth. I would not be able to stay here for long, and sooner or later, I would be on my own again. I woke up before dawn, long before Kayla's alarm clock filled the hallway with its usual morning chirping. My body felt stiff and heavy, the kind of weight that came from both exhaustion and dread. The blanket she had wrapped around me had slipped halfway off during the night, and my feet throbbed with a deep ache that pulsed in slow, painful waves. When I peeled the blanket back and looked down, the skin on my toes was blotchy and pale, with patches of raw redness. It hurt to even brush against them. I had seen enough medical photos during my brief time in nursing school to know this was not normal. It was not frostbite, but it was close enough to terrify me. Still, fear of overstaying my welcome was stronger. Kayla's father had been clear. One night. That was all. If he woke up to find me still asleep on his couch in the morning, he would not hesitate to call my parents or insist I leave immediately. Neither option was survivable emotionally or physically. I sat up slowly, trying not to wake Kayla across the room. She had stayed on the recliner to keep an eye on me, her body curled tightly under a fleece blanket, her hair spilling across her face. She had always been there for me in quiet ways, but this was the first time she had seen how dangerous my home life could be. I wished I could tell her more. I wished I could stay. But reality was already closing back in. I slipped the blanket off and stood wincing as pain shot up my calves. My feet felt strange, like the skin was stretched too tight. Every step sent tingling shocks through my nerves, but I kept going, quietly gathering my plastic bag of clothes and slipping my jacket on. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the heater. I paused by the front door, glancing once more at Kayla, wanting to leave her a note, but knowing she would try to stop me if she saw it. Part of me wanted her to. Part of me wanted someone to fight for me, to insist that I stay, that I deserved more than to be pushed out into a world that had already proven merciless. But Kayla could only do so much. Her father's caution hung in the air like a rule neither of us could break. I quietly twisted the knob, bracing myself for the cold outside. When I stepped onto the porch, the blast of icy wind hit me so hard it took my breath away. Snow had continued falling through the night, piling into thicker mounds that swallowed my feet instantly. Even though Kayla had found a pair of old flip-flops for me before bed, the thin rubber barely protected me. My toes curled, and the cold seeped through as if the shoes were not there at all. I made it to the sidewalk, each step stabbing me with renewed pain. The town looked serene in the early morning light, houses lined with frosted rooftops and snow-laden trees. The peacefulness felt cruel. I shivered violently and wrapped my jacket tighter around myself. The plastic bag crinkled loudly as I held it against my chest. I had no plan, no destination, no safety. I could not go back home. I could not stay at Kayla's. I could not walk for long. Yet I kept pushing forward, one slow step at a time. My breath fogged in front of me, drifting upward like smoke. I walked aimlessly for what felt like an hour, though my sense of time blurred in the cold. My feet were throbbing and numb at the same time, a frightening combination. I could feel the slow loss of sensation spreading upward. Every instinct in me screamed to find shelter before my body reached its limit. I scanned the street and spotted a small brick church at the corner. I had passed it hundreds of times before, its stained glass windows glowing warmly during holiday services. The back of the property had a fenced area with a shed and a tiny courtyard. If I could just sit behind the shed, shielded from the wind, maybe I could rest long enough to stop shaking. I trudged across the church lot, each step a battle. By the time I reached the back, my fingers and feet throbbed in aching pulses. I slipped behind the shed and collapsed onto a patch of snow that had been partly cleared by the wind. The building blocked most of the gusts, giving me a small moment of relief. I hugged the plastic bag tighter, trying to trap whatever warmth I could. The cold had a way of making time slow. Minutes felt like hours. My teeth chattered uncontrollably. My toes burned with needle-like pain, then slowly shifted into a terrible numbness that scared me even more. Frost nip. The word rolled through my mind, clinical and cold. It was the stage before frostbite, the warning sign that the body was beginning to shut down surface circulation. I tried rubbing my feet through the thin flip-flops, but the friction only made them hurt more. My hands stung as well, stiff and clumsy. A shadow moved at the corner of my vision, and I tensed. A woman wrapped in layers of mismatched coats and scarves shuffled toward me. Her face was lined with deep wrinkles, her eyes sharp but not unkind. She looked like she had weathered more winters than I could imagine. "Rough night," she said, her voice low and raspy. I swallowed, embarrassed by how pathetic I must have appeared. I nodded slowly. "My family kicked me out." She studied my bare legs and the flimsy flip-flops before shaking her head. "They will not help you until you look hurt enough. People only see what they want to see." Her words stung with truth. She lowered herself beside me, her movements slow and heavy. "You got to keep those feet warm or you will lose the skin. Trust me. Seen it happen." I hugged my knees closer, fighting back tears. "I do not have anywhere to go." She exhaled long and slow, her breath forming ghostly shapes in the air. "Then stick close to buildings. They block the wind. And if you see a place with lights on, try asking for help. Some people still care." I looked at her, grateful for even the smallest kindness. She nodded once more before pulling her hood tighter and shuffling away. Her presence lingered long after she disappeared. And in that quiet moment behind the shed, shaking violently and staring at the snow-stained ground, I realized something. If I did not find real shelter soon, the cold would win long before my family ever apologized. Morning came slowly, the kind of heavy, gray morning that crept over the sky without warmth or color. I had not slept, not really. I had drifted in and out of shallow, shivering awareness behind the church shed, jerking awake every few minutes when the cold became too sharp to ignore. My body felt stiff, my muscles aching as if I had run miles. My feet hurt the worst, a deep throbbing mixed with patches of numbness that terrified me more than the pain itself. When the church bells rang their soft automated chime at 8 o'clock, I knew I could not hide there any longer. I pushed myself up slowly, gripping the snowy ground for balance. The thin flip-flops Kayla had given me were stiff with frozen moisture. My breath shook as I stepped out from behind the shed and made my way around the church building. Cars were beginning to fill the parking lot. Members of the congregation walked toward the doors in heavy coats and warm boots, chatting about the weather or their plans for the day. Their faces were relaxed, comfortable, untouched by the storm inside me. I hesitated before stepping onto the walkway, feeling an almost physical shame pressing down on me. My clothes were wrinkled, my hair tangled, my skin pale from the cold. The plastic bag of clothing hung from my hand like a symbol of everything I had lost. I walked inside the lobby where warm air hit me instantly. The sensation was painful at first, a burning sting across my cheeks and hands as they tried to thaw. A few people stared. One older woman gasped softly when she saw my feet still red and swollen despite the thin sandals. I could not blame her. I probably looked like someone who had crawled out of a snowdrift. A volunteer greeted me with a clipped smile. "Good morning. Are you here for service?" I shook my head. "I need to talk to Pastor Reynolds. It is important." She blinked, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my appearance. "One moment, let me see if he is available." She walked away briskly, whispering something to another volunteer. I could feel eyes on me, curious but cautious, polite but distant. People were like that when they sensed something was wrong but did not want to get involved. After a moment, she returned and gestured for me to follow her down a short hallway. The pastor's office door was open, and he stood behind his desk with his hands clasped gently, his expression composed in that soft, almost rehearsed way that pastors often had. "Emily, come in," he said in a calm voice. I stepped inside, the warmth of the office nearly overwhelming. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old books. He gestured for me to sit. I lowered myself into the chair, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need help," I said quietly. "My parents kicked me out last night." His brows furrowed, but only slightly. Why would they do that? I swallowed hard, choosing my words carefully. "My sister lied about something. She said I hit her, but I didn't. She made it all up and they believed her." "They always believe her." He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his chair. "Emily, I am sorry you had a disagreement with your family, but I am sure things got heated. These things happen. It is best if you go back and apologize. Keep the peace." I stared at him, stunned. I almost laughed because it was exactly the kind of advice people gave when they had never experienced real dysfunction. "Pastor, I cannot go back there. They will not listen. They will not even let me inside." He folded his hands. "Families can say harsh things in the moment. You should be the bigger person." His tone was gentle, but it felt like a dismissal. My throat tightened. "I walked here in the snow last night. I slept outside behind the church. Look at my feet." He glanced down, his eyes widening for a brief second before softening again. "That must have been very difficult. But I think you should go home and talk to your parents. The best way to mend conflict is humility." Humility. The word punched through me like ice. I nodded politely, realizing there was nothing more he would offer. When I stepped back into the lobby, the warmth no longer brought comfort. It felt like pity I did not want. Outside, the cold hit me again as I made my way down the sidewalk toward the community center a few blocks away. Maybe someone there could help. Maybe anyone would. My feet dragged across the snow as I moved slowly, painfully. When I reached the community center, a receptionist greeted me with a bright voice that dimmed instantly when she saw my condition. I told her my situation in a low voice, hoping she might have resources or advice, but once again I saw the same hesitant look, the same fear of involvement. "I am sorry, honey," she said gently, "but without a police report or signs of serious abuse, there is not much we can do. You might try a shelter." The nearest women's shelter was across town, a long walk in normal weather, nearly impossible in my condition. I thanked her anyway and stepped back outside. The cold was sharper now, slicing across my skin like glass. My stomach twisted with hunger. I had not eaten since the diner leftovers the previous afternoon. The thought of food made me nauseous. I walked to the gas station down the road, hoping to warm up for a few minutes. The clerk gave me a wary look as I entered, but he did not tell me to leave. I wandered through the aisles pretending to browse while my body tried desperately to absorb the small bit of heat from the store. After a few minutes, the clerk cleared his throat. "You buying anything?" His voice carried impatience. I swallowed and shook my head. He sighed and gestured toward the door. "Sorry, kid, you cannot just hang around here." I stepped back out into the cold, my breath catching in my throat. The ache in my feet spread upward each step, sending flashes of pain through my legs. I walked aimlessly until I reached a payphone near the grocery store. It felt like something out of another era. I dug through my pocket, praying for coins. I found 2 quarters. I dialed my Aunt Susan's number with trembling fingers. She answered cheerfully, her voice warm. "Hello?" "Aunt Susan, it is me. It is Emily." There was a pause. "Oh, is everything all right?" I pressed my forehead against the cold metal of the phone booth. "No, I need a place to stay. Just for a little while." She sighed, the sound heavy and uncomfortable. "Emily, I love you, but I cannot get involved in whatever is happening between you and your parents. They are doing what they think is best. Maybe if you apologized." My chest tightened. I ended the call before she could finish her sentence. The rejection hit so hard I had to grip the booth to keep from sliding down. My breath shook the world, tilting slightly as dizziness washed over me. Everyone was telling me the same thing. Go back, apologize, make peace. But why was I always the one expected to bend? Why did no one care what they had done to me? As I stepped out of the phone booth and looked down the snowy street, one truth became painfully clear. If I did not find someone who believed me soon, I would lose more than just my home. I would lose myself. By early afternoon, the cold had soaked so deeply into my bones that even the brief moments inside heated buildings no longer brought relief. I walked slowly through town, each step sending sharp electric pain through my feet. The flip-flops were useless now, the thin rubber warped from the icy slush. The snow stuck to them, turning every movement into a battle. I felt lightheaded, dizzy, and dangerously tired. I clung to the strap of the plastic bag like it was the only anchor I had left. The streets were busier now, people running errands or heading to late morning shifts. They passed by with bags of groceries, warm coats, and steaming coffee cups. Most looked away when they saw me. Some stared with a mix of confusion and discomfort, unsure whether to acknowledge me or pretend they had not seen me at all. I kept moving. I had no other choice. By the time I reached the parking lot behind the grocery store, my legs felt shaky. I leaned against a brick wall, letting my head rest back for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. My skin felt hot despite the cold. My hands trembled uncontrollably. My mind was foggy, drifting in and out of focus. I did not even notice the footsteps approaching until a familiar voice broke through the haze. "Emily!" I forced my eyes open. Kayla stood a few feet away, her face pale, her breath forming little clouds in the air. She wore a heavy coat and fuzzy mittens, her hair still slightly messy from rushing out the door. "What are you doing out here?" I blinked slowly, trying to find words. "I left early. I did not want to bother your dad." She frowned, her eyes darting to my feet. "You should have woken me up." "You look awful." She stepped closer and took my arm gently. "Come on, you are freezing." She guided me toward her car parked near the back of the lot. I hesitated. "I should not. Your dad said only one night." "I know what he said," she replied firmly. "But I am not leaving you out here like this." She opened the passenger door and helped me inside. Warm air blasted from the vents, and it hurt at first, stinging my skin like needles as it thawed. Kayla climbed into the driver's seat and turned the heater up even higher. "What happened after you left? Did you find anyone who could help?" I shook my head weakly. No one believes me. Not the pastor, not the community center, not even my aunt. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. They all said the same thing. Go back and apologize. Kayla's expression hardened. "That is messed up. You did nothing wrong." I hesitated before speaking the truth that had been swirling inside me since last night. They do not care about the truth. They only care about protecting Madison, and she knows how to use that. Kayla looked away for a moment, chewing her lip, clearly battling with something inside her mind. After a long pause, she exhaled shakily. "Emily, there is something I need to tell you." The seriousness in her voice startled me. "What do you mean?" She kept her eyes on the steering wheel. "I should have told you sooner. I should have said something months ago, but I did not know how." I braced myself, my heart pounding. Kayla finally turned toward me, her voice low and tense. "Madison has bragged before about how she can get your parents to believe whatever she wants." My breath caught in my throat. "What are you talking about? When? Where?" Kayla swallowed. "At a party last fall. She was talking to a group of people from school. Someone asked how she always got out of trouble at home, and she laughed and said, 'I can make Mom and Dad hate Emily anytime I want.'" I felt the air leave my lungs. My chest tightened painfully. Kayla continued, guilt written across her face. She said it like a joke, but we all knew she meant it. She said she just had to cry and they would take her side without question. The words hit me like a blow. They explained everything. Every incident, every argument, every accusation that had landed on me without warning. My voice trembled. "Kayla, why did you not tell me?" She winced. "I was scared. You know how your family is, and I did not want to get dragged into drama." But seeing you last night, frozen and shaking and barefoot, I realized I cannot stay quiet anymore. Tears stung my eyes, not just from the cold, but from the overwhelming mix of gratitude and heartbreak. Thank you for telling me. Kayla reached out and squeezed my hand. I am sorry, Emily. I really am. I nodded stiffly, unable to speak. Kayla was the first person who had given me even a sliver of validation, the first person to say out loud what I had suspected for years. Madison's lies were not accidents. They were weapons, and she wielded them with precision. Kayla cleared her throat quietly. That scratch on her face last night, I saw her do that once before, during cheer tryouts. She made it look like another girl bumped into her so she could get sympathy from the coach. I shook my head, bewildered by how far the manipulation went. How many times had she done this? How many people had she fooled? Kayla hesitated again, a worried look crossing her face. There is more. My stomach dropped. What more? At the same party, someone joked that your parents seemed strict, and Madison said strict with me. Never. They only get mad at Emily. She said it proudly, like it was something she earned. My heart cracked open with a sharp ache. The truth I had spent years burying was now laid out in front of me, undeniable and painful. Kayla reached forward and brushed a tear from my cheek. You did not deserve any of this. I inhaled shakily, the warmth of the car making me feel faint. My feet throbbed again, reminding me of the damage done. My entire body was trembling, not from cold anymore, but from everything I had held in for years. Kayla leaned back in her seat. You cannot go back there. Not now. Not ever. They hurt you. They put you out in the snow. And Madison will not stop until she gets exactly what she wants. I stared at the frost-lined window, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. I could not return home. Not just because of what they believed now, but because if I did, I would be walking back into a battlefield where the outcome was already predetermined. Kayla turned the key, the car engine humming quietly. We will figure something out. I will help you. But before I could reply, she spoke again, her voice trembling. There is one more thing you should know. My heart hammered in my chest. Kayla continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Madison said once that she wanted to make sure you never had a future better than hers, that she would ruin anything you tried to have if she felt threatened. The world spun for a moment, and I gripped the edge of the seat to steady myself. Madison had not just acted out of jealousy or impulse. She had a motive, a plan, a pattern. And last night, she had taken it to a level none of us had thought possible. But now I finally had one thing I had never possessed before. Proof that someone else had seen her true face. And I knew deep in my chest this was only the beginning. The warmth of Kayla's car should have felt comforting, but instead, it made my skin burn with a deep throbbing ache that pulsed from my feet all the way to my chest. It was the kind of heat that did not soothe but exposed how cold I truly was. My toes stung sharply as if tiny needles were jabbing into them, and when I pulled the flip-flops off to check, Kayla gasped. Emily, your feet are bright red. That is not normal. My toes looked swollen, shiny, and raw around the edges. The skin felt tight, almost waxy. I tried to wiggle them, but the movement sent a bolt of pain shooting upward. I am fine, I murmured reflexively, but even I did not believe it. Kayla shook her head. No, you are not. We are going to the emergency room. Before I could protest, she put the car in drive, her movements sharp with fear. The world outside blurred into streaks of white and gray as snow continued to fall, covering the roads with a thin layer of powder. I leaned my head against the cold window glass, trying to fight the dizziness that washed over me in waves. My vision flickered at the edges, softening like a fogged lens. I blinked hard, struggling to stay awake. Kayla's voice kept reaching me through the haze. Stay with me, Emily. Do not fall asleep. You have to stay awake. I nodded weakly, but my throat felt tight and my mind sluggish. By the time we pulled up under the bright awning of the emergency room entrance, the pain had become so intense that it felt detached from my body, as if it belonged to someone else. Kayla ran inside to grab help, and minutes later, a nurse hurried out with a wheelchair. Sweetheart, can you stand? I tried to step out of the car, but the moment my feet touched the concrete, my knees buckled. The nurse caught my arm and guided me into the chair. The warmth of the hospital lobby hit me instantly, but it only made the burning worse. A sharp, icy panic cut through me. What if there was real damage? What if I had pushed myself too far? The nurse crouched in front of me and examined my feet. "Looks like frostnip at the very least, maybe early frostbite," she murmured, then looked up at me. "How long were you out in the cold?" My tongue felt heavy. "Hours, I think." She frowned deeply but kept her voice gentle. "Let us get you inside and checked properly." Kayla stayed close as they wheeled me through the ER. People stared, some in shock, some in concern, probably wondering how a girl my age had ended up looking like a half-frozen stray. A doctor approached, flipping through a chart. Emily Turner, 20 years old. Exposure to extreme cold, possible frostnip, early hypothermia symptoms. He touched my hand and my fingers responded sluggishly. "You are lucky you came in when you did," he said calmly. "Any longer, and this might have been much worse." He glanced at Kayla. "Was she alone when you found her?" Kayla hesitated. She swallowed hard, then nodded. The doctor looked back at me. "Emily, can you tell me what happened?" I stared at him, my chest tightening. I could lie. I could say I slipped outside. I could say I locked myself out by accident. The truth sat on the edge of my throat like a stone. "My family locked me out," I whispered. "Barefoot." The doctor's expression barely changed, but his eyes sharpened in a way that told me he heard every word. "And did they physically harm you before that?" His voice was soft, careful, giving me room to speak. I nodded slightly. "My dad hit me." I did not look at Kayla, but I felt her tense beside me. The doctor sighed quietly, then stood straighter. "Thank you for telling me. You are safe here. We will take care of you." He turned to the nurse. "Warm water immersion for the feet, slow rewarming protocol check for tissue damage, and notify social services." My stomach lurched. Social services. I was not trying to make a case. I was not trying to cause trouble. I just needed help. Fear gripped me, and I gripped the sides of the wheelchair. "Do not call them, please." The doctor crouched down so he was eye level with me. "Emily, what happened to you is serious. You were left outside in dangerous temperatures. You could have lost toes. You could have died. This is not something we can ignore." My breathing quickened, and I felt Kayla gently squeeze my arm. "He is not trying to hurt you," she whispered. "He is trying to help." The nurse rolled me toward a treatment room. The fluorescent lights felt too bright, and the white walls made everything surreal. When they submerged my feet in warm water, I sucked in a sharp breath. The pain was unbearable at first, a burning so intense it almost made me cry out. But then slowly, bit by bit, it softened into something more manageable. The nurse monitored me closely, asking if I felt tingling numbness or stiffness. "All of it," I whispered. She nodded. "That is the thawing process. It will hurt before it feels better." As I sat there shivering despite the warm blankets draped over my shoulders, a realization settled heavy in my chest. The frost nip was not the worst part. The worst part was how close I had come to giving up completely. Alone, in the snow, barefoot. The doctor returned after some time with a more formal assessment. "The good news is you do not have deep frostbite, but the skin is damaged and you will need to monitor it. Keep the bandages on. No walking long distances for a few days if you can avoid it." "And Emily," his voice softened again, "someone did this to you. You deserve safety. You deserve support, not punishment." Something inside me cracked, not from pain, but from a small, fragile moment of being seen. I nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you." Kayla hugged herself, watching me closely. "You are not going back there," she whispered. I looked down at my bandaged feet, pale against the hospital gown. The truth was clear. I could not. Not anymore. Not after everything. Leaving the hospital felt like stepping into another version of reality, one where everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The cold was still brutal, the snow still coated the sidewalks, and my breath still rose in pale clouds. Yet there was a strange clarity in my mind that had not been there before. The doctor's words echoed relentlessly in my head. Someone did this to you. You deserve safety. You deserve support. I kept replaying them as Kayla helped me hobble to her car, her arm steady around my waist. The bandages on my feet made every step awkward and painful, but it was a different pain now. A pain I understood, a pain that had a name. The other pain, the one inside my chest, was harder to grasp. It pulsed quietly like a bruise on the soul. Kayla opened the car door for me, watching me carefully. "You do not have to go back there," she said softly. "I know." I whispered, though part of me did not fully believe it. The car door shut, wrapping me again in artificial warmth. I rested my head against the seat, staring out the windshield at the falling snowflakes, drifting under the streetlights. Each one looked fragile, silent, disappearing as soon as it touched the glass. Maybe that was what my parents thought of me. Something soft, something weak, something that disappeared when it no longer served a purpose. The thought hit me with unexpected force, but instead of breaking me, it sparked something else entirely. I straightened slowly, my breath unsteady. Kayla glanced over with concern. "Emily, you okay?" I nodded once, though my heart was pounding. "I cannot keep living like this," I said quietly. "Running, hiding, hoping someone will finally believe me. No one will listen unless I force them to." Kayla's brows tightened. "What are you thinking?" I looked down at my bandaged feet, at the evidence of what had been done to me. My voice was steadier than I expected. "I am going back." Kayla jerked slightly in her seat. "Emily, no. You heard what your dad did. And Madison. They will twist everything again. You cannot just walk into that house." "I know," I replied, feeling the resolve solidify inside me like cooling iron. "But I am not going to ask for anything. I am not going to beg. I am not even going to argue. I am going to tell them the truth. Out loud, directly, without apologies. And if they still choose her lies over my reality, then at least I will know." Kayla stared at me as if searching for cracks in my determination. "What if they yell? What if they call the police? What if they do something worse?" I inhaled slowly. Then at least there will be a record, a moment where someone besides Madison gets confronted with the truth. And I am done letting fear decide what I do. Kayla hesitated, torn between understanding and terror. "Emily, they already hurt you once." I nodded, feeling a faint tremor in my hands. "They did. And that is exactly why I have to do this. If I stay silent, then they win. She win." The car fell silent, the only sound the hum of the heater and the soft thud of snow hitting the windshield. Kayla finally exhaled, long and shaky. "If you are going, then I am going with you." I turned to look at her. "Kayla, you do not have to." "I know," she said, her voice firm. "Which is exactly why I am coming." That small act of loyalty settled deep in my chest, warming a part of me I thought had frozen completely. I whispered a soft thank you, though the words did not feel big enough. We drove toward my street slowly, the world outside growing dim as the afternoon light faded. My heart beat faster with every turn, anticipation twisting in my stomach. I could see the house in my mind already, the warm glow from the windows, the wreath on the door, the illusion of a perfect family hiding the truth beneath. As we turned onto my block, the house finally came into view, looking exactly as it always had, but now it felt like the mouth of a cave where something dangerous waited. I stared at it, feeling the moment sharpen around me like the edge of a blade. This time, I was not walking toward them as the scapegoat. This time, I was walking toward them with the truth, and I would make them hear me. Kayla parked the car a little down the street from my house, giving us a clear view of the front porch glowing under the yellow light. The warmth inside that house felt like an insult from where I sat, my bandaged feet throbbing with every heartbeat. My chest tightened as if an invisible hand was pressing down on it, urging me to turn back. For a brief moment, I hesitated. The memory of my father's hand striking my face and the icy blast of snow burning the soles of my feet rushed back through me like a violent shiver. Kayla noticed. "You do not have to do this tonight," she whispered. "You can wait until you are stronger." But strength was not something I had the luxury of waiting for. If I waited tomorrow, fear might choke the courage I had gathered. If I waited next week, Madison would twist the story even further. If I waited a month, I would disappear in their minds completely. No, it has to be now, I said, opening the door. The icy air slapped my face instantly, but this time it did not send me backward. It pushed me forward. Kayla walked beside me, keeping a slow pace so I would not strain my feet. The snow crunched under our shoes, muffling most sounds except my rapid breathing. When we reached the porch steps, I paused, feeling the same dread I had felt the night they shoved me into the cold. But tonight was not a night of exile. Tonight was a night of confrontation. I knocked 3 times firm, but not frantic. The door opened almost immediately, as if someone had been standing right behind it. My mother appeared first. Her eyes widened when she saw me, her hand instinctively flying to her chest. "Emily, what are you doing here?" Her tone was brittle, a mixture of shock and fear, and something else I could not place. Right behind her stood my father. Richard's jaw tightened, and his eyes narrowed with a look I had seen too many times to count. Disappointment, irritation, authority. "Nobody invited you here," he snapped, stepping forward. "You need to leave before you cause another scene." Kayla stiffened beside me, but I raised a hand to stop her from speaking. I was not here to fight them. I was here to face them. "I just came to talk," I said quietly. My father scoffed. "There is nothing to talk about." "You made your choices." I clenched my jaw. "No. You made choices based on lies. And tonight you are going to hear what really happened." My mother stepped forward cautiously, her voice shaking. "Emily, honey, you need help. Your behavior lately has been erratic. You have been lying, manipulating, sneaking around. We are worried about you." I stared at her in disbelief. That line, that script, it was the same one they used every time Madison played her victim card. "I am not lying," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And deep down, you both know that." My father bristled. "You watch your tone. You do not get to talk to us like that after everything you have done. After everything I have done." I repeated bitterly. "You hit me. You locked me outside barefoot in -10 degrees. You left me out there." My mother's face went pale, but my father crossed his arms. "You forced our hand. You put your hands on your sister. You shoved her. You hurt her. You were out of control." My pulse roared in my ears. "I never touched her. She staged the whole thing. And you did not even ask me what happened. You just assumed I was guilty." My father leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. "Because you always are." Those 4 words sliced through me sharper than any slap. Always, are, always, guilty. No matter what I said, no matter what I proved, no matter how innocent I was. Kayla took a step forward, unable to stay silent. "She was not guilty. Madison has been manipulating you for years." I shot Kayla a warning glance, but she held her ground. They needed to hear it. My father turned to her with a cold stare. "This is a family matter. You need to leave." Kayla inhaled sharply. "I am not leaving her alone with you." I stepped in front of her, preventing the tension from escalating. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "you need to listen. Just once." He shook his head. "I do not need to listen to anything you have to say. You lie. You twist things. You create chaos. You have always been the problem, Emily. Always." My mother looked away as if the truth were too heavy for her eyes to bear. My hands shook. Not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming exhaustion of fighting a battle with people who were determined not to see me. I took a slow breath. "You want to talk about chaos. You want to talk about problems. Let us talk about Madison." My father's expression hardened instantly. "Leave your sister out of your nonsense. She cried for hours after you attacked her." My chest burned. "I did not attack her. She scratched her own face," I said. "She does that when she wants attention. She has done it before. You have seen it and ignored it. Every accusation I made, every piece of truth I dropped felt like throwing stones at a wall that would not crack." My father shook his head. "This is exactly the kind of manipulation your counselor warned us about. Making up stories, deflecting responsibility." My breath hitched. "What counselor?" My mother flinched. We spoke to your school counselor this morning. She said you have been unstable lately, acting out, seeking attention. My jaw dropped. They had painted me as unstable, untruthful, dangerous, and the world believed them. I felt something inside me break the last thread of naive hope snapping clean. I steadied my voice. Dad, Mom, I am here to tell you the truth. I am not here to fight. I am not here to beg. I am not here to fix this. I am here so I can finally say out loud what you refuse to hear. Madison lied. She framed me. She has been doing it for years. She is not who you think she is. My mother's eyes trembled with uncertainty, but before she could speak, my father pointed at me. Enough! You are not welcome here anymore. You step foot in this house again, and I will call the police. Do you understand me? Kayla gasped softly, but I did not flinch. The threat only confirmed what I already knew. They never wanted the truth. They only wanted control, and tonight they had lost theirs. I took a slow breath and whispered words I had never imagined saying to my own parents. Then call them, because I am done being afraid of you. A dark silence fell over the porch, thick enough to choke on. I turned to leave, but as I stepped away, the door slammed behind me, echoing across the quiet street. The conversation was over, but the confrontation had only just begun. The door slammed behind me with such force that the sound echoed down the quiet street, bouncing off the snow-covered driveways and empty yards like a warning shot. For a moment, I just stood there, my breath rising in trembling clouds as the sting of rejection settled over me like another layer of cold. The porch light glowed behind the glass, warm and golden, but it felt like a spotlight aimed at the fact that I no longer belonged there. I stepped off the porch slowly, my bandaged feet aching with each movement, and I tried to steady my breathing despite the sharp burn in my chest. Kayla approached gently from where she had been waiting near the walkway, her face tight with worry. Emily, I am so sorry. They did not even try to listen. I shook my head, my voice thin. Of course they did not. They never do. I took another step, my body heavy with exhaustion, humiliation, and something darker. I should have known this would happen. Kayla's eyes softened. You did what you had to do. They are the ones failing you. I nodded weakly, but the truth lodged in my heart like a stone. No matter what I said, no matter how calmly I spoke, no matter how close I came to breaking down in front of them, they had already decided who I was. I turned away from the house, ready to walk back toward Kayla's car, when a quiet voice called from the shadows of the neighboring porch. Emily. The sound made both of us freeze. I turned slowly and saw Mrs. Regan standing there on her steps, wrapped in a thick plaid coat, her silver hair tucked into a knitted hat. She was in her late 60s, small and wiry, the type of woman who noticed everything on the street even when others missed it. She stepped forward, the snow crunching under her boots. Honey, come here a moment. Kayla instinctively moved closer to me, uncertain. I hesitated, unsure if this was another trap or another adult ready to tell me to apologize to fix things to stop making trouble. But something in Mrs. Reagan's eyes was different, steadier, sharper. I walked toward her slowly, my breath catching from both cold and curiosity. When I reached the edge of her porch, she lowered her voice. I have something you need to see. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? She motioned us inside, glancing quickly toward my parents' house, as if afraid someone might be watching through the blinds. I exchanged a look with Kayla, then followed Mrs. Reagan into her warm living room. The heat felt overwhelming at first, and I blinked until my eyes adjusted. Mrs. Reagan closed the blinds and turned toward us with an expression that was both grave and determined. She spoke quietly but clearly. I saw what happened that night. My pulse quickened. The night my parents threw me out. She shook her head. That too, but I am talking about earlier, the night your sister staged that whole performance. My breath hitched. How did you know about that, Bez? Reagan walked over to a small table beside her recliner and picked up a tablet. She tapped the screen a few times before turning it around to face us. A paused video frame appeared. My heart nearly stopped. It was my family's backyard, specifically the side gate near the fence that separated our houses. The angle was unmistakable, captured from one of the security cameras mounted under her roofline. Mrs. Regan exhaled slowly. My Ring camera picked it up. I stared at the screen as she pressed play. The video showed Madison sneaking out the back door around sunset wearing the same hoodie she had worn the night she accused me. She stood in front of the side gate, breathing hard, glancing behind her as if making sure no one watched. Then she scratched her own cheek with her fingernail. Not lightly, not accidentally, but deliberately, slowly, with precision. She even pressed her thumb beneath the skin to deepen the mark. I felt bile rise in my throat as the footage continued. Madison adjusted her expression, switching her face into terrified innocence in seconds like an actress slipping into character. Then she rehearsed crying. Literal rehearsed sobs. She stood there practicing her lines, whispering them under her breath. She pushed me. She hit me. I am scared of her. Each repetition was clearer than the last, her voice gaining confidence, finding the perfect inflection to make it believable. My chest tightened until it hurt. Kayla covered her mouth, horrified. Mrs. Regan paused the video again and looked at me with eyes full of both sympathy and a quiet anger. I saw her do all this. I did not understand it at first, but when they threw you out barefoot in that cold, I started putting the pieces together. I had to be sure before I said anything. She lowered the tablet. I am sure now. I could not breathe for a moment. It was so much, too much. Proof, real proof. For the first time in my entire life, someone had seen behind Madison's mask. Kayla whispered hoarsely, "This is everything! Emily, this is what you needed!" My eyes burned as tears formed uncontrollably. My voice barely came out. "Why did you not tell my parents?" Mrs. Regan sighed, her face creased with worry. "Your father would not have listened." "Not then. And your mother, well, she tries, but she follows his lead. But now that they have heard your side tonight, even if they denied it, they have cracks. Cracks make room for truth." She placed a warm hand on my shoulder. "And you deserve someone in your corner." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you. I mean it. Thank you." She nodded. "I am not done yet." She hit play again. The video continued, showing something I had not expected. Madison rehearsed falling. She literally practiced tripping backward near the gate, flinging herself onto the ground as if someone had shoved her. She even glanced at the camera and smirked before restarting her performance. The cruelty, the calculation, the confidence in her deception made my stomach twist. Mrs. Regan stopped the video one final time. "I will show this to anyone who asks. I will stand beside you if you confront them again. They need to know what she has done." Kayla's voice trembled. "This could change everything." I nodded slowly, the weight of the moment sinking into me. My parents had refused to hear me. They had dismissed every word. But they could not dismiss this. They could not explain it away. They could not twist it into something else. Not this time. I felt something stir in my chest. Not relief. Not yet. But a spark of strength. A spark of truth. A spark that could burn down every lie Madison had built. Mrs. Regan straightened. "You ready to end this?" I wiped my eyes, my voice steady. "Yes, more ready than ever." The weight of the Ring footage sat in my hands like something alive, pulsing with the truth I had been denied for years. Every second of the video replayed in my mind as we left Mrs. Regan's living room, the cold air hitting my face with a sharpness that felt different now. This cold did not swallow me. It woke me up. Kayla walked beside me, her breath quick and visible in the night air, her hands stuffed deep into her pockets. Behind us, Mrs. Regan locked her door and followed her expression firm and resolute. "You sure you want to do this tonight?" she asked quietly, her voice steady despite the tension hanging in the air. I nodded. "Tonight is the only night. If I wait, she will twist it. She will find a way to get ahead of the truth." The three of us walked toward my house, each step heavy but purposeful. The porch light still glowed warm and unchanged, as if nothing inside that house had cracked or shifted, but everything had. Inside those walls, their lies were safe. But out here, with the evidence in my hand, the truth had teeth. When we reached the steps, Kayla touched my arm. "I will back you up." No matter what they say, Mrs. Regan nodded, and I will not let them push you away again. I stared at the door, feeling my pulse throb beneath my skin. This was it. The moment the years of blame, gaslighting, manipulation, and violence collided with reality. I raised my hand and knocked hard. The sound echoed through the hallway inside. Footsteps approached, quickly, heavy, and impatient. My father opened the door first, his expression darkening the second he saw me. His voice was low, already trembling with anger. I told you not to come back here. I stood my ground. You need to let us in. We have something you need to see. He scoffed, stepping forward to block the doorway. Absolutely not. You are not dragging more drama into this house. I met his eyes, refusing to let my voice shake. If you do not let us in, we will show it right here on the porch, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Something flickered in his eyes, a crack in the facade, but before he could respond, my mother appeared behind him. Emily, what are you doing? You need to leave before things get worse. I shook my head slowly. Things are already worse, and they will stay that way unless you listen. My mother hesitated, torn between fear and the instinct to maintain control. Then she glanced at Mrs. Regan and froze. Oh, her voice quivered. Hi. Barbara. Mrs. Regan stepped forward, her tone polite but steely. Evelyn. Richard. You should invite us in. This is something you both need to hear. The use of their first names stunned them both. My father's jaw tightened as he stepped aside reluctantly. Fine. 5 minutes. Then you leave. We entered the living room, the air warm but suffocating. Madison sat on the couch, curled up with a blanket and scrolling on her phone. The moment she saw me, she smirked. Well, look who could not stay away. Did you forget to cause enough chaos earlier? Her voice was sweet venom, but when she noticed Mrs. Regan and Kayla behind me, her smirk faltered. What is this? A pity parade? I ignored her and turned toward my parents. Before I say anything, I want you both to watch a video. My father crossed his arms. We are not watching anything, my mother chimed in. This is ridiculous, Emily. You need to stop with the stories and accept responsibility. Mrs. Regan stepped forward, holding up her tablet, but her voice was smooth and cold. This recording is from my Ring security camera. You can refuse her, but you will not refuse me. The room went silent. My mother blinked in confusion. Your camera? My father looked suddenly unsure. Fine. Show it. But it better not be some childish nonsense. Mrs. Regan pressed play. The footage illuminated the room. Madison's figure appeared on the screen, walking into the backyard, adjusting her hoodie, glancing around suspiciously. My parents leaned in slightly, their brows furrowed. Then the moment came. Madison scratching her own cheek. Deep, intentional, deliberate. My mother gasped softly. My father's face drained of color. Madison sat frozen. Her mouth parted slightly like she could not breathe. Mrs. Regan continued the video, Madison rehearsing her crying, practicing her lines, trying out different tones of fear. Then the sound of her voice. She pushed me. She hit me. I am scared of her. She repeated it over and over like she was memorizing for a role. My father stared at the screen as if it were a nightmare. My mother covered her mouth, tears forming instantly. Kayla whispered under her breath, barely audible. This is what she has been doing. Every time. The room felt like a vacuum. The video kept playing as Madison rehearsed falling backward near the fence, throwing herself dramatically to the ground. Then she stood up and smirked at the camera, a cold satisfaction twisting her features. When the video finally ended, the silence was suffocating. My father stood rigid, his fists clenching and unclenching. My mother looked like someone had ripped the floor out from beneath her. Madison swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. That video does not mean anything. You do not know what was happening. My father snapped his head toward her. Stop talking. His voice cracked like thunder. Madison stiffened, her lips trembling. Mom stared at her, tears running down her cheeks. Madison, tell me this is not what it looks like. Madison's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes darted between us, between all the people who had finally seen behind the mask she worked so hard to polish. Then anger flared in her expression, sharp and defensive. She pointed at me. "This is her fault. She makes everything impossible. She ruined my life. Everyone always compared me to her. Everyone thought she was better. I just wanted them to see the truth." My father stepped forward slowly, his voice low and shaking. "So you lied. You staged everything. You scratched yourself. You pretended to be hurt." Madison's face twisted with frustration. "So what if I did? You two never listened to me unless I looked upset. She got away with everything. She always got special treatment. I had to do what I had to do." My mother let out a sob. "Special treatment? Emily has never gotten special treatment in her entire life." Madison's voice sharpened to a shriek. "You loved her! You loved her more than me! All of you did!" The room seemed to spin as her meltdown spiraled. She threw the blanket aside and stood up, pointing viciously at me. She deserved it. She deserved everything. All of it. There it was, the sentence that cracked the world open. My father staggered back a step as if the words had hit him physically. My mother broke into uncontrollable sobs. Kayla pressed her hand against her chest, horrified. Mrs. Reagan nodded grimly as if she had expected this all along. I stared at Madison, no longer shocked, no longer hurt, no longer desperate for her to see me. I was only tired, deeply, painfully tired. My father's face hardened into something dark and unfamiliar. "You ruined your sister's life. You put her in danger. You lied to us. You manipulated us." He took a shaky breath, his voice hoarse. "And I hit Emily because of your lies." Madison's eyes widened with real fear for the first time. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but nothing came out. My mother moved toward me slowly, tears blurring her vision. "Emily, honey, we are so sorry." I shook my head, stepping back. Not yet. The truth still hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had burned too long. I turned to Madison, meeting her eyes without flinching. "You wanted me gone, erased, blamed for everything so you could shine. You finally got what you wanted." Madison's chin quivered. I could see her scrambling internally, reaching for excuses, stories, any version she could twist into her favor, but this time there was no escape. The evidence was undeniable. The witnesses were present. Her voice collapsed to a whisper. "I did not mean for it to go that far." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting out a steady breath. "It did. And you did nothing to stop it. You watched it happen. You enjoyed it." When I opened my eyes again, no one spoke. No one defended her. No one gaslighted me. For the first time, the truth belonged to me. The living room fell into a suffocating silence, so heavy it felt like the air itself had weight. No one moved. No one breathed. Madison's confession still hung in the air, vibrating with the force of everything it shattered. My father stood completely still, his chest rising and falling in slow, uneven breaths, as if he had been hit so hard he could not yet process the pain. My mother remained frozen, her hands covering her trembling mouth, tears slipping between her fingers. Kayla looked stunned, her wide eyes flicking between us in disbelief. And Mrs. Reagan stood like a sentinel, calm but fierce, her presence grounding me in a moment that otherwise felt surreal. Madison shifted her weight, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. She tried to look defiant, chin lifted, but her eyes gave her away. They darted frantically from face to face, searching for someone to rescue her, someone to take her side like they always had. But no one stepped forward. My father finally found his voice. It was not a shout. It was low, almost strangled, a sound I had never heard from him before. "You did this." Madison flinched as if the words struck her physically. His eyes darkened, filling with a mixture of shock and anger, so intense it nearly radiated off him. "You lied. You staged everything. You let me believe your sister hurt you." Madison's lips quivered. "Dad, He held up a hand, stopping her instantly. "No, do not talk. Do not lie again." The room vibrated with tension. My mother lowered her hands and took a shaky breath, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to your own sister?" Madison's face hardened, the fear slipping back behind that familiar wall of cold entitlement. She ruined everything for me. She always has. I was drowning. I had to do something. Something! The word echoed sharply as if she truly believed the elaborate cruelty she inflicted on me counted as a necessary action. My mother shook her head slowly, backing away a step. No, no, Madison, this is not normal. This is not something a good person does. A good person. Madison repeated the words with a bitter laugh, throwing her arms out. That is the point. Everyone wants her to be the good one. Sweet Emily. Perfect Emily. Even when she does nothing, she is always the favorite. My father's jaw clenched. Emily has never been the favorite. You got everything. Everything you asked for. He gestured toward the room, the house, everything that surrounded us. We spoiled you. We defended you. We believed you. Madison's voice cracked into something ugly and sharp. And look where that got me. My father stared at her in disbelief. Look where it got you. You almost killed your sister. The words hit the room with explosive force. My breathing stopped. Kayla gasped. Even Mrs. Reagan shut her eyes, briefly absorbing the weight of it. Frostnip might not have been life-threatening yet, but another hour in that temperature barefoot could have meant frostbite. A loss of toes, nerve damage, or worse. Madison's face twisted with outrage. Oh, please. She was being dramatic. She could have come back inside if she wanted to. My mother's voice rose unexpectedly, trembling with fury. We locked the door. We locked the door on our own daughter because of you. Madison took a step back, her confidence faltering. Mom, you are not listening. She is manipulating you again. She always does this. She wants you to feel sorry for her so she can turn everyone against me. I wanted to laugh from the absurdity of her projection, but the ache in my chest kept the sound trapped. My father shook his head slowly, almost mechanically. He looked at me then for the first time, really seeing me. The bruises, the bandages, the exhaustion, the fear, the pain he had put there. His voice cracked. What have I done? My mother began to sob, covering her face again, her shoulders shaking. We did this. We believed lies. We hurt her. We threw her into the cold. How could we do that? My father ran both hands through his hair, pacing in a tight circle. He muttered to himself softly, horrified. I hit her. I locked her out. She could have died. I watched him crumble piece by piece under the realization of his own cruelty, but there was no satisfaction in watching him break. Only sadness. Only the quiet awareness that everything I had hoped they might someday understand had arrived too late. Madison watched them unravel with a tightening jaw, her eyes narrowing with fear, turning into anger. She turned to me, pointing with accusation sharpened into something venomous. You are loving this, aren't you? You finally got what you wanted. Everyone turning on me. Everyone seeing me as the monster. I stared back at her evenly. I never wanted that. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted a family that listened. Madison scoffed. A family that listened. You have no idea what it is like to be compared to someone like you. Someone who pretends to be quiet and innocent, but always makes me look bad without even trying. My voice shook, but I did not look away. I never tried to make you look bad. You did that on your own. She stepped closer, her fists clenched, her anger boiling over. You do not even know how easy you have it. Everyone loves the shy, sweet girl who keeps to herself. People fall all over themselves to comfort you. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is being the one expected to shine, expected to smile, expected to be perfect? My mother gasped. Maddie, baby, no one expected you to be perfect. Madison threw her a vicious glare. Stop pretending. You pushed me into everything. Cheer, honor roll, church events, all of it. And then you compared me to her every time she managed to do anything at all. My father's face darkened. That does not excuse what you did. Nothing excuses that. Madison's breath quickened. She was losing control, losing the room. losing the narrative she had built for years. She lunged for my phone, desperate. "Give it to me. You are not showing that video to anyone else." Mrs. Reagan stepped forward with surprising swiftness, her voice firm. "You will not touch her." Madison froze, staring at her as if she had just been slapped. "Mom!" she hissed desperately, turning to my mother. "Say something. Tell them she cannot do this. Tell them Emily cannot ruin me like this." My mother stepped away from her tears streaming down her face. "I do not even know you right now." Madison's expression shattered the panic finally breaking through. She shook her head rapidly. "Mom, please, please listen to me. Dad, I did not mean for everything to get so out of hand. I was just trying to protect myself." My father's voice rolled forward like distant thunder. "Protect yourself from what?" "From the truth." To that, Madison had no answer. She looked at me again, her face crumpling with a mix of fury and desperation. "You think they will love you now. You think this changes everything. It does not. They will always come back to me. They always do." My heart sank. Even now, even with nowhere to hide, she still believed she held power. But something in my father finally broke. He stepped backward, sinking slowly onto the sofa, his elbows on his knees. "I cannot believe I let this happen. I cannot believe I hurt my own child because I trusted lies." My mother knelt beside him, resting her hand on his back. "I am so sorry, Richard. We should have seen it. We should have known." She looked up at me, her eyes full of guilt. "Honey, I am so sorry." I wanted to feel her apology settle into me, to fill some part of the wound, but instead I felt only numbness. Sorry was too small, too late. Sorry did not erase frostnip. Sorry did not heal bruises. Sorry did not undo years of being treated like the family problem. And sorry did not protect me when I needed it most. Madison stared at both of them, shaking with disbelief. "You are choosing her. After everything." My father looked up slowly, his voice steady but hollow. "No, we are choosing the truth." Madison's face contorted into rage. "This is not fair. None of this is fair." She stepped toward my mother, hands shaking. "Mom, tell him he is wrong. Tell him you see what she is doing." My mother pulled her hand away from Madison's grasp. "I saw what you did. The truth was in that video, and in your words, and in your eyes. I cannot ignore it. I will not ignore it." Madison stumbled backward as if the rejection physically hurt her. "This is not happening. This cannot be happening." I watched her unravel. The golden child, the center of attention, the untouchable one, now exposed, now fragile, now small. Kayla whispered softly as if speaking to herself. She never thought this day would come. Mrs. Reagan stood firm beside me, but it did. It had to. The living room grew quiet again, but this silence was different from the silence after the confession. This one was the silence of truth, settling into place, rearranging everything it touched. My father stood slowly, his voice exhausted. "Emily, we need to make things right." But I already knew nothing they said could undo the damage. Nothing could give back the nights I cried alone. Nothing could give back the trust I lost years ago. Nothing could restore the safety they took away. And nothing they said could change the fact that they only listened when someone else forced them to. I straightened my breath steady. "You cannot fix this tonight. You cannot fix this with words. What you did mattered. What she did mattered. And all of you let it happen." Madison looked at me with hatred and terror intertwined. "You will regret this." But she was wrong. The only regret in the room belonged to the people who finally realized the truth too late. My father lowered his head. "Emily, please." I shook my head once. No, not tonight. Maybe not ever. The truth had torn the house apart. But for the first time in my life, the pieces were not falling on me. The house felt unbearably small after everything that had been exposed to the walls, holding in the leftover echoes of shouting accusations and broken illusions. I could feel the weight of my family's collapse pressing down on us from every direction, thick and suffocating like humidity after a storm. No one moved. No one dared. Madison stood like a statue near the coffee table, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for some last bit of control. But there was none left. My mother leaned heavily on the armrest of the sofa, her face blotchy from crying, her hands trembling uncontrollably as if she could not decide whether to reach for me or recoil in shame. My father sat hunched forward, elbows on knees, his fingers interlaced tightly, his breath unsteady, his eyes distant, hollowed by guilt he could no longer push away. The truth sat between us like a shattered mirror, each piece reflecting everything they had done, everything they had allowed, everything they had ignored. I finally broke the silence. I am leaving. The words cut through the room instantly. Kayla turned toward me sharply. Emily. But I shook my head. This is not my home anymore. My mother's voice cracked desperate. Honey, wait. Please. Just wait. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. You threw me out barefoot into -10 degrees. You locked the door. You chose her lies over my life. And now that the truth is out, you want to pretend we can fix everything tonight. It does not work like that. My father lifted his head slowly, his face gray with remorse. Emily, you are right. We failed you, but we want to make this right. We need to make this right. I stared at him, trying to find even a sliver of the man I had once hoped he could be. But all I saw now was a stranger who had hurt me more deeply than any enemy ever could. There is no making this right, I said quietly. There is only taking responsibility. My mother took a shaky step forward. We will do anything. Anything you ask. My voice did not waver. Then you are going to tell the truth. Not just to me, not just to her, to everyone. My father blinked. What do you mean? I took a slow breath, feeling the old wound in my chest throb. For years, you let people think I was the problem. You let neighbors whisper. You let church members look at me with pity. You let family treat me like a burden. You let Madison play innocent while you tore me down. My mother's face crumpled completely. Emily. My voice sharpened with the strength I had never known I possessed. You are going to undo that. My father looked confused. Undo what? Mrs. Reagan stepped forward, her voice firm. They are going to clear your name, publicly, the same way they smeared it. I nodded, grateful she understood without needing it explained. My mother wiped her eyes with her sleeve. We can apologize to you, honey. We will, but a public apology. People will talk. My chest burned with a bitter laugh I could not release. Oh, now you care what people think. Kayla folded her arms. They cared when the lies made Emily look bad. They can care now that the truth makes them uncomfortable. My mother looked between all of us overwhelmed. Richard, what do we do? My father exhaled, shaking his head as if trying to clear the fog of denial. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. She is right. We have to tell them. My mother stared at him in shock, unable to speak. Madison jerked as if she had been slapped. You cannot be serious. Dad, you cannot do this. You will ruin my life. My father looked at her, his eyes full of something I had never seen before. Resolve. Your actions ruined someone else's life. Now you face the consequences. Madison's face twisted into a furious mix of panic and entitlement. I will not let you do this. I will tell everyone she forced you, that she manipulated all of you, that she threatened me. My father stepped toward her slowly. And who will they believe? You. Or the video footage. Madison froze. Her lip trembled. She opened her mouth, but no excuse formed. No lie would survive the scrutiny now. My father turned back to me. We will do it. Tonight. But he hesitated. What do you want us to say? My throat tightened. Everything. That I never hurt her. That she scratched herself. That she lied. That you hit me without listening. That you locked me out. That you failed me. that she manipulated all of you, that you allowed it." My mother shook violently, tears falling hard now. "Oh, God. Oh, God, Emily. I am so sorry." I held up a hand. Sorry is not enough, but it is a start. My father retrieved his phone from the counter, his fingers shaking as he opened the Facebook app where most of their extended family, church members, and neighbors were connected. He typed slowly at first, then paused, glancing at me with uncertainty. "Say it exactly, I instructed." He nodded, cleared his throat, and began typing. Every word felt like a stone dropping into a deep well. "We need to address something serious and painful. Our daughter Emily was wrongly accused of harming her sister. Those accusations were lies created by Madison. We believed Madison without question. We allowed her manipulation to destroy our trust in Emily. We failed Emily as parents. We threw her out in dangerous cold weather. We caused her harm because we trusted falsehoods. Emily deserves the truth to be known. We take full responsibility." My mother leaned over his shoulder, reading the words through blurred eyes. When he finished, she placed her hand on his. "Post it." And he did. The moment his thumb pressed send, a strange silence settled over the room again. But this silence was different. This one was heavy with accountability. Kayla checked her phone. "Comments are coming in already." I sat quietly, unsure how to feel. Vindicated, angry, numb, sad, freed. All of it tangled together until it felt like none of it. The notifications multiplied rapidly. Mrs. Reagan glanced at me. "You deserved this truth. You deserved far more than this truth." My throat tightened, but I nodded. Madison's face crumpled completely now. Her breath came in short, panicked bursts. "Everyone will hate me." My father looked at her with exhausted sadness. "Actions have consequences. You should have thought of that before you hurt your sister." Madison shook her head violently, backing away as if trying to escape the room entirely. "No, you are ruining everything." I said nothing. For once, I did not need to. Her lies had turned to ash in her own hands. My father turned back to me. "Emily, what happens now?" The question surprised me, but it was honest. He was asking what role he would play in my life after destroying so much of it. I straightened. "Now I leave." My mother let out a broken cry. "No, please, stay! We will fix this. Let us fix this. Our family can heal." My voice was gentle but firm. "I hope someday you do heal, but not with me here." My father swallowed hard, understanding settling into his expression. "Where will you go?" I glanced at Kayla, who squeezed my hand. The answer formed easily. "Somewhere safe, somewhere far from any of this." Mrs. Reagan nodded approvingly. "That is the right choice." Madison let out a sob full of rage and fear mixed together. "You cannot just walk away. You cannot leave me with the blame." I looked at her one last time, my voice calm and unshaken. "The blame was always yours, whether people knew it or not. And now they do." My father ran a hand over his face. "Please, Emily, before you go, is there anything you want us to know? Anything we can do?" I looked at him for a long moment. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to collapse. Part of me wanted to hug him and pretend none of this ever happened. But the truth was simple. I do not want anything from you, not anymore. Just remember what you did, and do not ever let it happen again. To anyone. The room sank into silence again, but this time it was final. A quiet ending. A fracture that would never fully mend. I inhaled deeply and finally said the words that closed the door on the life I once knew. Goodbye. And this time, no one stopped me. The night air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, a sharp wind brushing against my bandaged feet and slicing through the thin layers of my borrowed clothes. But for the first time, the cold did not feel like a punishment. It felt clean, real, honest. A reminder that I was alive, choosing my own path, no longer trapped in a house built on lies and favoritism. Kayla walked beside me, quiet but steady, matching my slow pace as I descended the porch steps. The snow, crunching beneath our feet, no longer sounded like the cracking of something breaking, but rather the sound of something new beginning. Behind us, the house was silent. No yelling, no slamming doors, no footsteps rushing after me to drag me back inside. Just silence. A silence that belonged to them now, not to me. When we reached the street, I turned around for one final look. The porch light glowed warm against the winter darkness, but it no longer pulled at me with the longing it once did. That light had never truly been for me. It had always been for the illusion of a perfect family, one that had pushed me into the cold rather than face its own dysfunction. Kayla nudged me gently. "You ready?" I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle into my bones. More ready than I have ever been. We walked toward her car, and she opened the passenger door for me, helping me ease in without straining my feet. When she turned the heater on, the warmth filled the space quickly, but this time it did not sting or overwhelm me. It wrapped around me gently like something I finally deserved. As we pulled away from the street, I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror until it disappeared behind a bend. I felt no urge to look back again. The further we drove, the more the heaviness loosened from my chest, falling away piece by piece like snow sliding off a roof. Kayla glanced at me. "So where do you want to go tonight?" I hesitated. For years, the answer had always been home, no matter how unsafe or toxic it was. But now the word meant something else, something I could build, somewhere I could choose. I took a deep breath. "Aunt Susan's." Kayla raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" She did not want to get involved before. I nodded. She was scared of my parents, but she is not scared of the truth. And after everything that happened tonight, I think she will understand. Kayla nodded thoughtfully and turned onto the main road. The town looked different now as it passed around us. Streetlights reflected off the snowbanks, casting long shadows that looked like old ghosts fading behind me. The dark storefronts, the quiet houses, the empty sidewalks. All of it felt like a world I had survived, not one I was stuck in anymore. My phone buzzed in my lap. I glanced down hesitantly. A string of notifications from my mother's Facebook post flooded the screen. Comments poured in from relatives, church friends, neighbors. I did not open them. Not yet. Instead, I locked the phone and placed it face down. Tonight was not about clearing my name online. It was about reclaiming myself. As we drove farther away, Kayla spoke quietly. "I want you to know something. You did the bravest thing I have ever seen anyone do." I looked at her startled. "Standing up to them, walking away, choosing yourself. That is brave, Emily. Really brave." My throat tightened and my eyes stung unexpectedly. "Thank you." She smiled softly. "You are not alone anymore. Not unless you want to be." I turned my gaze back toward the road ahead, the headlights carving a clear path through the falling snow. For the first time, the unknown did not terrify me. It excited me. When we reached Aunt Susan's house, her porch light was still on. Not bright and harsh like the one at my parents'. Warm, soft, inviting. Kayla helped me up the walkway, and I knocked on the door with a steadiness I did not expect to have. A moment later, the door swung open. Aunt Susan stood there in her robe, her hair messy from sleep confusion crossing her face before recognition flooded in. "Emily." Her voice cracked the moment she said my name. "What happened to you?" She ushered us inside without hesitation, wrapping her arms around me carefully as if afraid I might break. When she pulled back and saw the bandages on my feet, her expression darkened. "Did your father do this?" I nodded silently. Anger flickered in her eyes, but she swallowed it, focusing instead on helping me to the couch. "Sit. I will get blankets." Kayla explained everything as I leaned back against the cushions, exhaustion sinking deep into me. Every detail spilled out the lies, the staged scratch, the video, the confrontation. Aunt Susan listened with widening eyes, her face twisting from horror to heartbreak to fury. When Kayla finished, Aunt Susan shook her head slowly. "You are not going back there? Ever. You stay here. For as long as you need." Something warm bloomed in my chest, soft and unexpected. "Thank you," I whispered. She brushed hair from my face gently. "You deserved better. You always did." I settled into the blankets she brought, letting the warmth embrace me. My body hurt. My feet throbbed. My heart carried bruises no one could bandage. But I was safe. Safe, in a way I had never been before. As my eyes grew heavy, I thought back to that night on the porch barefoot in the -10-degree snow, believing I had been thrown away. But now, I saw it differently. They had not thrown me away. They had freed me. When I finally drifted to sleep, I did not dream of cold or fear or shouting voices. I dreamed of something else entirely. Space, silence, light, and a future that finally belonged to me. If you are still here with me after everything Emily endured, then I want to take a moment to speak directly to you, heart to heart, because stories like hers are not just stories. They are reflections. They are mirrors. They are echoes of things far too many people have lived through in silence. Maybe you grew up in a home where someone always had to be the scapegoat while someone else could do no wrong. Maybe you know the feeling of being punished for telling the truth while others were rewarded for lying. Maybe you remember what it was like to tiptoe around the people who were supposed to love you the most, hoping tonight would not be the night something exploded. Or maybe you have watched someone you care about get torn down by the very people who should have lifted them up. If any part of this story stirred memories you have buried deep, I want you to know something important. You are not alone. What happened to Emily might be fictional, but the pain behind it is not. It is real in ways that statistics cannot measure, and it is real in ways that too many families pretend not to see. Abuse does not always leave visible bruises. Sometimes it hides in favoritism, in manipulation, in guilt, in the quiet ways a family decides who deserves love and who deserves blame. And for anyone who has ever been thrown out emotionally or physically, whether it happened on a freezing winter night or inside a warm house full of people who refused to hear you, I hope Emily's journey reminded you of something powerful. You can walk away. You can choose yourself. You can survive what others thought would break you. And you can rebuild even if it takes time, even if it feels impossible at first. If you felt even a spark of anger, sadness, or recognition while listening to her story, I would love to hear your thoughts. What part hit you the hardest? What part reminded you of something from your own life? What moment made you stop and say, I have seen this before? Your voice matters more than you think, and when you share your experience, someone else reading the comments might feel less alone because of you. And if you want more stories where the truth rises, where the underdog stands up, where justice comes in unexpected ways, I would be grateful if you subscribed. Not because numbers matter, but because I want to keep building a space where people like Emily and like you feel seen. A place where no one has to wonder if they are crazy or dramatic or imagining things. A place where we acknowledge that silence protects the wrong people and speaking up saves the right ones. Before you go, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in Emily's shoes? Have you ever been blamed for something you did not do, shut out when you needed help, or punished because someone else knew how to fake innocence better than you could defend yourself? If so, I am genuinely sorry for what you lived through, and I hope this channel becomes a place where those old wounds begin to feel lighter. Thank you for spending your time with this story. Thank you for feeling something. Thank you for staying until the end. And above all, thank you for standing with people who were thrown into the cold and found the strength to walk toward the light anyway. If you are healing from something like this, I am rooting for you. If you are still in the middle of it, I hope you find the courage Emily did. And if you got out years ago but never heard someone say they are proud of you, let me be the first I am proud of you. Truly.